So we'll start out, as we always do, with introductions and then kick it off with the presentation. Then I think today's presentation is going to be a little more kind of Q&A in the moment, if that's what Patrick wants to do. So feel free to jump in with questions whenever. We can make this as conversational and casual and mutually productive and fun as always. So with that, I'm Drew Corson. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Carrick's Consulting Group and one of the organizers of 1 Million Cups.
I am Leah Rowe. I'm the VP of Finance and Operations at Healthfinch. I am also the founder of Culture Community, and we actually have an event tomorrow, our monthly event for Culture Community. It's in this room, same time, same place, different coffee, but there will be coffee.
So
it'll be very deja vu. So yeah, you can just stay in here. But our speaker tomorrow is Sarah Young from Zing Collaborative, and we're going to be talking about accountability and getting the right, not just getting things done, but getting the right things done, and working on a culture of accountability and increasing effectiveness on your team. So Culture Community is a nonprofit, and it's just a bunch of people who are really enthusiastic about company culture and want to make a difference in your organizational culture. So open to the public. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Alex Ryan, founder of Prairie Light Solar, a renewable energy consulting firm.
Aiden Winery, I work at M3 Insurance.
Travis Human, I own Stray Cat Bicycles, which is an online consumer direct bicycle company based here in Madison.
Good morning, Tim Cyphers. I'm a first timer and I do management consulting.
Hi, I'm Anna Coffey. I'm also a first timer and I'm a recently former Epic employee.
Julianne Slusky, Business Development Manager at the Madison Club.
I'm Dan Anderson and I work for Baker Tilly.
Dominic DeMarco, entrepreneur in residence for QBE Insurance, which is a massive multinational insurance company that has its global innovation lab in Sun Prairie.
I'm Chandra Miller-Feenan. I'm the Director of Operations and Programming for Starting Block Madison. We're the entity that's building the entrepreneurial hub on 800 block of East Washington Avenue that's opening up in spring of 2018. And I also just want to make a quick plug in my introductions. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I'm also working with a new project called FoodWorks Madison, and FoodWorks, if you haven't heard of it, is $5,000 short of a $50,000 Kickstarter campaign with 3 days to go. And what FoodWorks is doing is trying to close the race to equity gap by finding people that are unemployed in our communities of color and connecting them with 3 weeks of job training for kitchen skills and then placing them in Madison's best restaurants. So if you want more information afterwards, I'm happy to talk to you about that. Thanks.
Good morning, I'm Brent. I'm the founder of Growth Chart, which provides software for preschool documentation.
Hi, first time as well. My name is Patricia Woldridge, and I'm the owner of Mariposa Learning Center. It's a bilingual early childhood program located in Stoughton.
I'm DP Knudten of Collaborator Creative. I collaborate creatively with complicated companies on everything from freelance copywriting to nonfiction branding. A very quick plug, I'm speaking at Dream Bank on Tuesday, July 11th at 9 a.m. about my nonfiction branding process and system. If you're interested, stop by. I've got tons of these little postcards and stuff like that.
I'm Jeff Liggis, former business owner, looking for my next opportunity, and got no plugs.
Hi, I'm Heidi Kumjan, and I am interning at Carrick's Consulting Group with Drew.
Chloe Mayer with Pine Point Consulting.
Hi, I'm Steve Sletton. Can you go unplugged, Drew, too, with this thing? I'm just kidding. I'm a scientist and business developer and career networking here.
Angie Allen, also my first time, and I'm Director of Marketing and Operations at Nova One Networks.
Howdy y'all, I'm Christopher Patterson. I am CEO of Medisoft Solutions. We are a software development company focused entirely on pre-Series A startups.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariah Vella. I'm an intern here at the library, and so I thought I'd just stop in.
Great. Well, and before we get started, thank you so much to our stalwart sponsors. Old National Bank's provided the coffee from Crescendo again, Field 59, Cats in the Back, with the live stream and then the uploaded video on our YouTube channel. And thank you so much to the library for this wonderful space. So with that, we'll hand it over to Patrick.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Ryan. I'm in my real life, I'm a second generation owner of a private ambulance service here in Madison called Ryan Brothers Ambulance. We've been around for 55 years. So that's kind of my main focus in life, but my passion that I've really got involved in, I'm here to tell you about, and that's GiGi's Playhouse. I'll talk to you a little bit about what GiGi's Playhouse is. We're part of a national network. Try to give you a little perspective on how I've become involved, and I think that'll resonate, hopefully, to explain the mission and how we try to change the lives of individuals with Down syndrome. So kind of coming from a parent perspective and why it's been so important for my family and how I've seen it impact other families, I think would be important to share. And then tell you a little bit about actually how GiGi's Playhouse operates and what we offer. So GiGi's Playhouse started in 2003 by a lady by the name of Nancy Gianni, who when her daughter Gigi was born in the greater Chicagoland area, didn't find enough services for her daughter as she was born and began to develop. So she started her own. She's a big picture, big thinker type person, and she started out to start a brand new nonprofit to provide free therapy and educational programs for people with Down syndrome. Remained very small. They added a couple through the first few years in the Chicagoland area, and fast forward to today, there's 31 across North America, including one in Mexico. We were the 30th to open. So we're part of a national network that helps us on the back end side with IT, business type strategies, lots of things with HR, and really gives us that national support and gives us a brand. But we really can do what we find Madison needs in terms of providing services to those with Down syndrome. So a little bit about, I guess I should add, we're over on the east side on Monona Drive. Crema Cafe is a popular restaurant over there. We're in that same little strip mall. We've been open since May of last year. So as I heard about 1 Million Cups, I really kind of thought of it as an opportunity to do what one of my main goals is, and I think that's connect with the greater community. I've been involved with some other Down syndrome type activities and organizations, and I think as we've evolved as a community, so to speak, that's one thing that I think is lacking, is the connection to the greater community in terms of fundraising, but also in terms of getting people involved in the mission and being able to help and assist us as we try to carry that mission out again, as I mentioned earlier, changing the lives of those with Down syndrome. So as we said earlier too, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Mike's style is kind of conversational. I'd like to just really kind of give you the information that you're looking for rather than just kind of present what I think is important, because I think that's how we can connect with the community in a nutshell. So a little bit about my experience. So my wife and I, we adopted a little boy when he was 2.5. After lots of struggles, while we were adopting, we had our own, right, not there long after. Our daughter Grace, who's now 9, who's the third in line, my wife, when she became pregnant the second time, we found out prenatally that she would have Down syndrome. We went through the testing, so it was kind of a shock. And I've met lots of different parents who have had lots of different experiences. Some that even in the Madison area, and we're talking literally 10 or 12 years ago, where when they left the hospital with their child with Down syndrome, they were given a Xerox 10-year-old newspaper article and said, here you go, you're out into the world with no support, no knowledge of really what that is. So I think we were fortunate in that we had the opportunity to kind of digest it, to connect with people, to other families. And that's really, I think, the thing that GiGi's Playhouse brings that I've seen so valuable is connecting families so they can talk about their struggles and their victories as well, so to speak. But giving them that place, that playhouse to go to so that they can connect with people like that. So as I got involved with the Madison Area Down Syndrome Society, which is a great parental organization that's more networking, it's more support and advocacy. When I was on the board there, we struggled with the idea of how do we bring true, tangible things to our members. And so this concept of GiGi's Playhouse was raised. Really thought that was a great idea. We spent a couple of years trying to do it kind of collectively as one big umbrella. Financially, we all know there are more nonprofits in Dane County than just about anywhere in the upper Midwest, so it was a struggle. So we really hit a lot of roadblocks. We had to kind of pull the plug on the joint idea. When my time on the board ended, one of the other former board members said, I think this is still a great idea. Let's reconvene and try to put this together. So we run kind of parallel along with the Down Syndrome Society that's more about advocacy, more patient family, I should say parent and family focused, where GiGi's Playhouse brings tangible free therapy and educational programs and allows those to be available to everybody in the community, from mothers who just got a diagnosis all the way up to young adults. And in fact, young adults, I think, is probably the area that needs the most attention in terms of finding resources for kids when they're done with school, when they're 19, jobs, housing, and ways to provide them the tools to have a productive and happy life. So that's one thing that, as I'll kind of summarize as we get towards the end of what we're talking about GiGi's Playhouse, is an important thing that I think one of the things to take away today as we try to embark on that next step of adding to GiGi's Playhouse. So when I first got involved, as we raised the money, finally opened our doors in May of last year to GiGi's Playhouse, it's been remarkable to see the growth. We've also then gone back to the MADS, or the Madison Area Down Syndrome Society, and forged a very strong bond with their mission, our mission, and then also finding the ways that we work together. Because in the fear early on was we'd have some kind of unintentional but real competition when we're talking about to donors and others, but we've been able to collaborate to say, they're great at this. Mainly it's that advocacy piece, that connection, that family connectivity, where GiGi's has the tangible programming, and then we have that area where we work together. So that's been one of the biggest joys, I think, over the last 6 months that we've been able to establish, and it's really grown what we've been able to do. So talking more specifically about what I've seen and how it's impacted individuals, parents and children and young adults alike, there's a number of different programs that GiGi's has packaged that have been tried, have been established and researched through their national network that they allow us to bring here locally. Things such as the literacy program. We've started that about 4 months ago. My daughter's been a part of that, and she's grown a great deal in terms of her reading. And I think of it also too as a supplement to school. It's not, it's not to take the place of anything that happens in schools, but we know most of these folks, these children as well as young adults, need additional resources to be able to flourish as they get older. So literacy training, programs for 0 to 3, LMNOP, lots of cute little names with these different programs. The Art Explosion. The one we started this week it's called the Special Olympic Young Athletes. So it's 2.5 to 7-year-olds as they prepare to get involved in Special Olympics. And to see the joy on these faces of little kids when we're there. And it's also, think of it as a place where they can go where they see kids like them. Where I live in Wanakee, we're just overjoyed with the infrastructure with special education. But my daughter, there's a vast array of special needs, but my daughter doesn't really see anybody like her with Down syndrome. There's a couple children in the district. But to go to GiGi's Playhouse to see other kids, the parents, it's a little different mindset too when you go there to say, I don't really have to worry if my kid's going to yell or, she's going to act up, which is going to happen, because the other parents are all in the same boat. It's very difficult to go into the greater community and to be part of some of these programs that are great. But when you're always kind of worried about the behavior type things, it's really nice to have that inclusive feeling to be part of a community that you really feel a place in. Other things that we have, the SMART program, which I've tried as I've researched for a number of my different talks to find out what SMART stands for. I don't know. Nobody can tell me what that is, but it's come from the national organization. But it's for young adults. And that's really flourished. We've had between 15 and 20 young adults who have just made dramatic changes. A couple in particular with the literacy program that have gone through school, they're in their early to mid-20s, don't read at all, have been going through these literacy programs with one-on-one tutors, all volunteers, and now to see them start to read, and to be in public and hear the stories of when they start to see signs and they point that back out to their parents that they know what that means, it's huge. And again, they've gone through all these years of school and it just hasn't resonated with them with that one-on-one attention. So we have one paid person, it's our site coordinator. Everybody else is a volunteer. That's another very, very key aspect of GiGi's Playhouse. And the mission from day one will always be that everything is free, as I've mentioned a number of times. As we talked about what the future will hold, GiGi's Playhouse also has developed what's called GiGiU, which is meant for young adults. It's really a kind of a mini university. It's about 8 to 9 months long. Some of the playhouse that have had the room have added, alongside their existing playhouse and another storefront. But it's really remarkable in terms of life skills, balancing checkbooks. There's at the GiGiU in Hoffman Estates, there's a little coffee shop called Hugs and Mugs. Been there a number of times, and to see the interns there running the cash register with some support is really life-changing, and that's our goal. So eventually, as we continue to evolve in our GiGi's Playhouse model, that is our goal, to be able to add that to our array of services that we're able to provide. So for those young adults, because again, when kids, and in talking to other parents, you kind of go through these stages, and some of the stories that were shared with me before my daughter was born, a couple resonate really, really highly still. One said, my kid with Down syndrome is my easiest kid, because when I come home, he doesn't care what kind of shoes he has on, he doesn't care what kind of jeans he's wearing, he just wants to come, hug me and tell me he loves me, and I see that every day with my daughter. The second thing that really still holds true to me with my daughter being almost 9 is that one father said to me, my son's 7 or 8, and I haven't thought about Down syndrome in 3 or 4 years. I said, really, why is that? He said, well, because that's him. And so I see that now too. My daughter Grace, I don't know her without Down syndrome. So it's like almost kind of, it goes out, kind of goes by the wayside right now in this stage of life, because she is who she is, and I can't imagine her any other way. But I know as I talk to older parents, as they get more to the high school age and even further past that age, the life does change. It becomes a little bit more of a struggle in terms of life skills. My ultimate goal is for Grace to be able to live on her own, probably with some roommates and maybe a case manager that can come in and check up on her, but for her to have independence. I mean, there are individuals with Down syndrome who drive, that get married. I don't know if any of you have seen, there's a show on A&E called Born This Way. It's kind of your traditional reality show that follows 8 to 10 young adults with Down syndrome. And the view, I think, for those that have not been exposed to what Down syndrome is in 2017, you'd be amazed to see what these individuals do. And again, I think the key is we can give them the services that they need and deserve to help them develop. I know when I was growing up, we had a pretty integrated with special ed at East High School. But I think now to what's available today is light years beyond that, so that again we can see individuals out in the community working, enjoying life, and being productive as well. And that also has an economic impact too when we look at it as a whole in terms of what we need to support these folks. So when you think about why am I here today, why do I think it's important to come and talk to the community? Because we need help. As I mentioned earlier, I think one of the things I want to do foremost is to connect with the community at large, with MADS, with fundraising, even with GiGi's to this point. We have talked to the families, we've raised money among our families, but we need to connect with the community at large. That's corporate people. What I found really, really rewarding over the last 4 or 5 months, I've worked to transition our board from kind of a startup, mostly first-hand people who have an interaction with Down syndrome, to now finding 3 to 4 over the past couple of months of individuals who don't have a direct connection, but they hear this story and they want to get involved, and they can bring in 300 people in their contact list to be able to help support our mission. So what's really been rewarding, and I think what I want to continue to build on, is we change our board from a do-it board to a governance board that has people from the community that can better connect us with everybody out there. So that includes getting volunteers to run our programs. As I said, board members. We'll have our largest fundraiser this year in October, a gala. There's some information scrolling along with the PowerPoint, so that's what we're working on right now. So finding individuals who can help put on events. I think it takes special people. I'm not one of those people that can really pull something like that off. We've got a small but growing team that has got a great start on this October event. So that's one thing that we need. People that can help us connect with corporate sponsorship to be able to bring people to the door so they can hear what's going on, because I think people that message is going to resonate with them, especially when they see it. You can see the joy in some of the individuals' pictures that we have here. So I think that's the biggest thing is, as I mentioned, is finding folks to hear about it, that maybe have some interest in it, and then bringing them in and showing them Playhouse. We have our site coordinator is there kind of regular business hours in general, Monday through Friday. So it's open to stop by. We have open play different days during the week where parents can bring their children in, or new expectant parents can come in and talk to somebody and find out more information. So if you have the desire, all you got to do is stop in, again, Monona Drive and Buckeye Road, and see. It's a beautiful space. We're so fortunate to have the backing of some of our local businesses that have helped us open those doors, including the landlord that has rented us that space. We originally signed, I think it was a 4-year lease, and we thought about early on, well, what do we do if we run out of space? And my thought was that would be the best problem we could have. So with that's our goal, is to add those different services that we can provide. So we have to think about that. How do we raise the money to be able to add on to it? So any questions that I can answer for anybody? Yes, sir.
Maybe starting medically, what is generally known about some of the reasons for Down syndrome?
Sure.
And is it at all connected in any way to autism? Are they close?
There are, I'm not a doctor, I always have to specify that, but there are individuals that have a dual diagnosis, and so those that have both autism and Down syndrome. As far as a direct medical correlation, I'm not aware of one, but basically it's a third chromosome, 21st chromosome. Trisomy 21 is the medical term. You kind of hear the idea that it's mostly older moms. Well, older mothers do have a higher chance of having a child with Down syndrome. However, there's many more young mothers that have babies, so there's many more younger mothers that have individuals with Down syndrome, if you can follow my logic there. So that is a higher risk, and that's kind of where we fell into when Grace was conceived and born. But some of the common maladies that come along, heart problems are very key. I know when we went to the cardiologist prenatally, which they did in the womb ultrasound to find out that Grace's heart was good, that was a huge hurdle to get over because many of them have structural heart defects. Obviously, cognitive disabilities or cognitive delays, speech and language is also a program that we offer as well. That's a problem. I know with my daughter, she talks a mile a minute, but we can only understand a certain amount of it. And as she's getting older, it's getting more frustrating for her because she has a lot to say, but we can't always figure out what she's telling us. And so those are some of the common things. Tend to be smaller in stature. Weight is usually an issue, so we have some fitness programs as well. And I think primarily, with the different other problems that come along with that, cognitive issues and the other, is a little bit harder to keep them active, but then also diet is important. So those are all common things that we try to work against or to turn the tide on, I think. But I think, again, I'd summarize that by saying it's remarkable to see what individuals with Down syndrome can become if they're given the tools to do that and they're given the proper ability to flourish and to develop. Yes?
Can you talk about the actual facility, what it's like, what the hours are, how people interact with it?
I wish I would have had. I should have. There is one. Maybe I'll point that out. There's when you see the room with the big. That's at the Playhouse. Most of these are at the Playhouse. You can see some bright, beautiful colors are part of it. It's essentially if those of you who've been around Madison for many years, Monona Bouterie was a store that was in there since 1950, I think. They went out of business. We actually got that storefront. So think of it as that. It's a wide open space. A key component of GiGi's Playhouse is to have a stage. I know my daughter likes to sing on that stage, and there's mirrors so she can see when she's doing that. But there's also tutoring rooms, so there's individual one-on-one rooms along one side of the building. But basically it's an open space that we can do lots of different things, hold events, we can have physical type activities in there. We also have a teen room where there's video games and they can kind of hang out there. We have a kitchenette, so we can prepare snacks that go along with the program. But essentially it's kind of meant to be an open slate, so it can be very multi-dimensional. It's about 3,500 square feet. The open hours are we're closed on Sundays and Mondays, but Tuesday through Friday, we have office hours. Our one paid site coordinator is there. They vary a little bit, but generally it's the business hours. We are open a little bit later on Wednesdays, so that goes into the evening, so we're open late morning to early evening on Wednesdays. The hours do tend to change by the season. We went through a struggle early on when school started. Our participation kind of dropped. Kind of made sense as we talked to other Playhouses, and I guess that's one thing I haven't emphasized either. Being part of a national network allows us to be able to talk to other Playhouses all across the country to find out what's worked. But then we also have to kind of translate that to what works for Madison. But back to my point is that we had a drop, but when school starts, everybody changes their schedule. So in the fall, our schedule will change a little bit. We're actually moving our site coordinator from 35 hours to 40 because that's, again, another good issue. There's enough work for her to do. But basically, you can drop in on Saturdays. There are programs usually a couple of days a month. On our website, there is a calendar with events of when they are, so you can see when there's either a program, you can come in and observe that, or just come in and talk to Yuli, our site coordinator, just to kind of hear more about actually what happens there. Yes?
Are there any, from the corporate world, in America or internationally, firms that have stepped up that really, have a conscientious or effort to help in this particular space?
There have been. That's one of the things that the Playhouse or the national office is continuing to try to develop and to connect with folks on that level. I don't have off the top of my head knowledge of particular ones, but I know that was talked about last year at our national convention of trying to find, A&E. The show that I mentioned before, they've reached out to GiGi's Playhouse for kind of guidance as they develop that program. But looking in they're in the Chicagoland area, and I think it's really kind of done more on the local level. So I know Minneapolis has been very, very successful with their fundraising and galas. I think we're so new into things, and I haven't mentioned two kind of more nuts and bolts things. Our budget's about $125,000. So again, with one paid person, that's everything to keep the lights on, to pay the rent, insurance, and those types of things. So everything else, we also do now have a great grant writer who's one of our volunteer board members who's helping us secure grants to do specific programming, that's allowed, that goes into that bucket as well. But our overhead's very low. I mean, we're 10% national mission support goes back to GiGi's Playhouse for what they provide for us. So that money essentially stays here. And as we can, it's kind of our task then to develop these relationships locally. We've developed a great rapport with American Family, some other local businesses. I know Ryan Brothers, we've obviously been a big part of that. We had a acre builders from Waunakee. When we had our first build out, we got a bid of about $150,000. We had about $100,000 to spend, half of which was gifted. Like, okay, what are we going to do? They were able to talk to their contractors and subs and got it under $100,000. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that I've, along with other board members, have worked to try to do to develop that local relationship with those entities, and we need to continue to do that.
Well, dovetailing off that, what do we need from the technological advances, medically speaking? You know, pharmaceutical companies,
right.
Things like what's on the cusp? Do you talk about it? Is your board or
yeah.
that is going on?
Well, there's really two different stories to tell there. One good and one bad. Good, I think, is there's some different trials dealing with Prozac and some things that have had really suggest some very good results in terms of cognitive improvements with people with Down syndrome. Some other things with ginkgo biloba and things along those nature. I know Stanford has been really active with some studies there. On the other side of the coin, unfortunately, I read some really troubling articles in the international news. There's countries in Europe that are trying to eradicate Down syndrome. Their goal, I think, I don't remember if it was Sweden or which of those Scandinavian countries, but their goal is to wipe that out completely. You can kind of imagine how that would happen or how that could be accomplished. So that kind of lends some uncertainty to what is the world of Down syndrome and individuals with Down syndrome, what's that going to mean if that happens further? There are studies that say, a common stat that was kind of been refuted though is that on the coast, the abortion rate is about 90% prenatal diagnosis. I've seen that disputed, and maybe it's somewhere around 60 to 65%. It tends to be lower in the Midwest. And my point is not to get into that discussion, but it's rather to say, I think we need to have two sides of, or at least give information on both sides of things, that the pregnancy could not continue, or if it does, here's what your child with Down syndrome can become. Not it's this. I mean, there's struggles. I don't get me wrong, but the notion of what Down syndrome is and what it looks like in terms of what individuals can achieve is so different than most people think. I think in dealing in past history. So to be able to present the side of with all these abilities to develop and to flourish, an individual with Down syndrome can have an outstanding life. And my daughter has so many gifts. She's a social butterfly. She was able to do hopefully it'll show up in the ads. SSM looked for somebody, St. Mary's looked for somebody with Down syndrome to be in a photo shoot. We had that last week. I was so scared that she wasn't going to cooperate. The little girl ahead of her was 12 or 13 years old, and they could say, okay, tilt your head this way. I knew Grace was not going to be able to do that, so I mentioned to the photographer, I said, hey, I think if we ad-lib this, it might work a little bit better. And so we sat down as we waited for the doctor to come who was going to be in the shot. The doctor never quite showed up. And as I was interacting with Grace and she was laughing and I was tickling her and she was getting some great grins, the photographer said, here, take this jacket. I said, all right. I was only the back of my head. And hopefully I won't show up in the shot. But it worked beautifully because I had my back to the camera. Grace was here. We just laughed and giggled for 15 or 20 minutes, and they got some great shots. So, obviously that's a good example of the recognition of if we can show what an individual with Down syndrome can be, I think we're going to change perceptions and ultimately change lives for the individuals as well as their families.
How many people in this area? What percent of the population is quite small?
That's asked a lot, and I haven't seen any good data. However, I could add this, is that we see about 75 to 80 individuals with Down syndrome on a per monthly basis in the Playhouse. And then when you add that to the families, because we're also servicing the families as well, we're looking at between 125 and 150 people on a monthly basis. Now, granted, there's repeat business from month to month, but I think, and we still have to grow. I mean, we have to get the idea out to, or the knowledge to the greater community to know that this resource is there. And we're seeing people a lot, very often coming in, wow, I did not know this was there. We've had people come from Stevens Point, from La Crosse, to come and take advantage of what's happening there because of its unique nature that you really can't get anywhere else.
Approximately how many hours a week do the children go to GiGi's Playhouse?
Well, it's really on a program basis. So our programs are set, in advance. They're on the calendar. We run approximately 5 to 6 programs right now that may meet once or twice a month. So it's not okay, you're in this class. It's here's what we have to offer. Here's when you can come. And then, so our participation does go up and down, but we have individuals recruited from our volunteer base to run the programs. But we've seen about a 70% increase in our participation rate over the last 6 to 8 months, partially, I think, due to the fact that we've had that better connection with the Madison Area Down Syndrome Society, and we kind of have started to get more awareness out there. But we have lots more opportunity to grow in terms of individuals that we can serve.
So speaking of awareness and all of that, are you guys partnered with the hospitals and the doctor's offices so that when a woman does get that diagnosis, then that's immediately provided that this is an option?
That's one of the great things that the Madison Area Down Syndrome Society does. So they have a new parent packet. It's kind of, it seems counterintuitive, but when you think about it, it makes some sense. There are some HIPAA issues, in terms of privacy and those types of things, so those have to be navigated. But the hospital, so with Mariner and St. Mary's, where babies are born, there is a good network set up. So when a diagnosis or when a baby is born, because again, some people go to the they go to the hospital to have their baby, and then all of a sudden they're told, well, your baby has Down syndrome. And then the next question is, well, what does that mean? So there are connections. I know MADS has a kind of a team of individuals that can get called, take calls. But then also, from that point of view, but then also we work prenatally, like the way it worked for us, is to be able to have that through the hospitals to connect folks. And then, but if we can have more awareness of, okay, you hear about your friend from high school who just had a baby that now has Down syndrome, where do you go? If you can help provide that information, then we have that network established throughout the community. I think that's important. Next. Go ahead.
Sorry. So what kind of background do your volunteers have?
They have a willingness to be a part of it. So there is a background, there is a volunteer training. So that happens about once a month. So that they're brought in and given a good rundown on what happens at the Playhouse. Obviously, here's how we do things, as I said, a background check. But basically it's a willingness to want to be part of it. So, some people, we have speech pathologists, we have some people really high level. We're going to be appointing to our board a PhD candidate who's just about done with her thesis, who's going to oversee our program. So we have kind of that high-level oversight, but the people who are actually there interacting can be anybody that just has a want to be there.
Could you say a little bit more about the interaction between the national office and the satellites? More
Sure.
just like cohesive branding and then letting the individual offices run, or is there lobbying effort for them?
So I think the best way the way I view it from my perspective as the board president is we have as I kind of mentioned earlier, a network of individuals to draw from, to connect with, to get guidance from. So one of the goals, and we're in that process right now, is we want to have board turnover. We don't want to have the same folks doing this for 20 years. I think people get stale. We need to have new ideas. So, I'm going to go off the board in 2019. We'll have more people. So having that expertise for new board members, but having a president's call that I was on 2 months ago where we talked about the galas. So that's the largest fundraising event for everybody. What works? This worked for us, this didn't. Silent auction, those types of things. So having that basis for that, but then also just having an IT system that's supported on that backside, having an HR payroll process that's set up and established where we just plug people in, having the website that we can ask them to make changes to, and then support for our particular events that we're going to have. So it's kind of that infrastructure in place, and then also a national conference that I've been to just this first time last year is really invaluable to get people together. To kind of give feedback to the national group to say, hey, this isn't working, we'd like this better. I know there was a lot of discussion about the national mission support, the 10% that goes back to national, and some folks thought they didn't get what they wanted, in return. And I think there was a lot of good dialogue to really kind of realize, well, what if that all went away? There'd be a huge void. So we are getting lots of structure and support from the national organization.
So for community awareness and how can we get involved, what would be the best thing for us to do? You mentioned the gala. Is that the best way to spread the word and have people buy tickets to that to learn more and also give money to?
Great question. I think I'd say two things. One is we just need general overall volunteers. So if you have an interest, you can go on the website, email us, Our site coordinator, Yulia Myers, will follow up with you. I'd be happy to provide some business cards as well. I'd be happy to field those. So just on a general volunteer basis. But two, I think in terms of what we need right now is we need to make this a successful gala. So if you have an interest in producing events and being able to connect with where we can get people to the gala, so that means buying tables, getting individuals to buy tickets, those types of things. So being part of that team to pull this effort together, because it is our first real one. We did have one about 3.5 years ago as we were preparing to open, much smaller scale, but this is really key. So I think general overall volunteers, and then two, especially if you have an interest in event planning, that's what we need.
And then you need like amazing big companies in Madison, like Baker Tilly, for example, to buy a table for their people.
We do, and we are starting, and I had a new
We'll
board.
sit right next to the health bench table.
I had a new board member that I brought on and said, yeah, I'd like to do cold calls. I said, you would? I said, all right, you're signed up. So we're starting kind of embarking on that, but we're primarily just connections. My connections, our other board member knows these folks, so it's that personal connection to people. And I know some people at Baker Tilly, so maybe I can throw some names around.
Yeah, that's good. Where is the gala going to be?
It's going to be at the Sheraton on October 13th. We're going to be bringing in a speaker by the name of Rob Snow, who has a son with Down syndrome, and he's also does some stand-up kind of motivational speaking. He comes very highly regarded. He's from Cleveland. He's done some great organizational things there for their Playhouse, and has a great website. He has his own foundation now that has helped support individuals with Down syndrome in the Cleveland area, but he's going to be our main speaker. And we'll have, the traditional silent auction, all those types of things as well.
How much of the money do you expect that's raised will stay in this community?
Well, as I mentioned,
you said 10% goes to the
right. So everything else is here.
Everything's
Yep. And then when you talk about what's our cost per dollar raised, I don't have it because we're relatively new. I don't have a dollar figure to give to you. But again, with one paid person, we have very little overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Very little.
You mentioned Madison Area Down Syndrome Society.
Yes.
Is that part of a national?
That is, well, there are.
relate to GiGi's nationally, or does
It's kind of funny, as we navigated this whole, let's bring a GiGi's Playhouse to Madison, there's a kind of a dynamic where there's, again, like I kind of alluded to, a little bit of competition, and in some communities, that parent organization and GiGi's Playhouse kind of clash. And so we were cognizant of that, and we tried to really work through that. And we had a little bit of frostiness early on because we kind of, there's kind of that unintentional competition, but we've been able to bridge that gap. So there are many parent organizations. There's 3 or 4 in Wisconsin in general. They tend to be just geographical, but this kind of illustrates the point. There's 2 in Milwaukee that kind of work against each other in a way. So they kind of a splinter group, and then they start their group. So we've got, it's Upside Down Wisconsin, and then I think it's Down Syndrome Advocates. So they're just like with any community like that, you can get people that kind of want to do their own thing, and then it really dilutes the message. But so what we've been able to bring cohesively, I think partially because of our leadership as well as Matt's leadership, is we're doing this together. They have a golf outing, we're not going to have our own golf outing. We do have a company, Madison Mortensen Investment Group actually is putting on a golf outing next month that they pick a charity to be a recipient of half of the funding, the other half goes to their foundation. They rotate that. So this will be the second time we've been the recipient of that. But Mads has a golf outing. Mads has a walk, we won't have a walk. So we try to cross-pollinate as well as we try to support both. But while we have different focuses, we have this area in the middle, the classic Venn diagram. Here's what they do, here's what we do, here's where we overlap, how do we support each other?
So do you guys share funding at all?
No. My ultimate goal, I think, because they don't have a facility, and then they have a part-time person that runs their organization out of their home, I think it would make great sense that here's our site coordinator's office, here's Mads, their parent person here in the next office. That makes sense to me. Hopefully we can get to that someday.
I think we're just about out of time. Any party thoughts? Danny, any more questions?
I do, actually.
All right, well, maybe Patrick can stick around for a fireside chat with Danny Anderson.
Yeah, a little warm today.
That's our sister organization, first one today. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. This is great. Please come back. Thank you to Old National Bank, the library, Field 59, and all of you. See you next Wednesday.
Thank you.